Good morning, everybody. I would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone here, both to our guest speakers and to our participants who joined us for today's youth webinar, Youth in the Post-War Reconstruction Process. My name is Patriona and I'm a member of the EESC and as well representative of the National Youth Council of Latvia, and I will be moderating today's discussion. The webinar will focus on the youth dimension of the war in Ukraine and on the new youth realities following the conflict. In the first panel, our guest speakers will present the main short, medium and long-term initiatives supporting the current challenges that young people are facing in Ukraine, particularly important in the context of the European Year of Youth. In the second panel, several proposals will be presented to you by our guest speakers, and you will be kindly asked to express your support for proposals presented that, in your opinion, are the best way forward during the reconstruction process in Ukraine. Before we begin, I want to mention some housekeeping rules. So the whole event will be in English with no interpretation. The webinar will be recorded and uploaded to the web afterwards. There will be an online audience Q&A during the first panel, 5 minutes per session, and it will be in Slido. So if you wish to ask questions, please submit them only via Slido. You can access Slido at slido.com, and you can find the link and hashtag in the chat. During the course of the debate, you can ask questions and vote for the questions. The most voted questions will be asked to our panelists. Otherwise, questions will be answered on a rolling basis. Please be aware that questions in the chat of the webinar will not be considered during the Q&A session. Also, anonymous questions will not be answered, so please sign up with your name and surname. During the second panel, you will be asked to vote for the proposals presented by our speakers today. There are no breaks foreseen. However, we are planning to finish at 12 Brussels time sharp. And if you want to see all guest speakers at the same time, there's a together a gallery mode you can choose. You have to click 3 dots on the interface to see this option. And there is no option to change your name after joining the webinar. So we are hoping for active your participation, so please take an opportunity to raise your questions to our guest speakers in Slido. So, but to start, please let me give the floor now to Mr. Boland, President of the Civil Society Organizations Group of the European Economic and Social Committee. Thank you very much, Mr. Boland, for joining us from US. It's very, very early morning, so it's 4 a.m. for you. So the floor is yours.
Good morning, dear Katrina, and good morning to all your colleagues. Yes, it's slightly earlier here in the US. But isn't it a wonderful world in a way that we can have such an event and we can be speaking from different places and different times even. And it is a great credit to the way we have come on as a civilization. And yet, in that same civilization, it is sad to have to say that we have a war as cruel and as illegal as it's going. I'm very proud as president of civil society organizations that this youth webinar is happening again, the second time since we began our last mandate. I'm making sure that as president, along with you, Katrina, and others in the youth group, that we will ensure that events like this will happen. And I'm pleased that in this European year of the Youth Coordination Group, that many people, especially the youth, will begin to think about what the kind of world we are moving into. And in this title, Reconstruction, is a very apt title in order to look and see how it is. Because whether we like it or not, we have a war that will mean a lot of reconstruction. We have a world that needs a lot of reconstruction. And it is the generation now coming and awakening that will do a lot of that reconstruction. And that's those of you who thankfully and who gratefully have tuned in this morning. I suppose the topic will be addressed by the various panels following the invasion. Questions. how youth and youth organizations could be supported for short, medium, and long term. How can they be made resilient? How can they have the strength and improve their capacity in their role in this reconstruction process? The other main question would be, what can we in the EESC do in order to make that happen, and particularly to support the many youth civil society organizations that exist all across Europe? At point, I would like to talk about the relief of construction proposals for European civil society. In point 38, which includes the recommendation on the role of youth and youth organizations. For example, we recommended encouraging partnership between the EU and Ukrainian national youth councils, as well as exchanges between young people and youth organizations from Ukraine and the EU. I can tell you here in the delegation to the United Nations, and indeed in Washington yesterday, we can be very pleased that there is a tremendous determination by people here in the US to connect with young people. And indeed, I ask people to look at the upload of this seminar, because as many of them raised the issue of how young people, particularly in the leadership of youth, will begin to imagine that reconstruction. Inevitably, I made the link to the ongoing war in Ukraine with the quotation by John Paul Sartre, who said that older men declare war, but it is youth that must fight and die. We often think about war and its horrible consequences. I'm afraid I'm long enough around to kind of remember what happened during the Vietnam War and the other wars, the horrible wars. And indeed, it was the movement of young people in terms of looking at the horrificness of war that in a way brought that to a conclusion. I hope we don't have to wait for young people to have to bring this to a conclusion. But we do need to imagine a world that allows the sovereignty of nations like Ukraine to grow and mature and be that nation, which is why we are very pleased in the EU and the EESC that Ukraine is now a candidate country. And we're very pleased that the resolution passed by the committee in the last couple of weeks, ensuring that we are and will support Ukraine. Finally, may I ask you, many of you looking at this live and who will look at it later, please include your thoughts, particularly the thoughts of young people in the organizations that you represent, so that we can have the kind of dialogue that can bring the reconstruction process to a reality and to a better outcome. I wish you well this morning in this conference. I can assure you once again, as president of Group 3 civil society organizations, we will continue with events like this in support of young people and their organizations throughout the EU. Thank you very much, Katrina.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boland, for your inspirational speech and for emphasizing the role of young people and youth organizations. I'm really sure that today's webinar will also bring new reflections and will trigger further discussions. Thank you very much once again for joining us today. We're gonna just check whether you have managed to join us in Slido. So we will proceed with some introductory questions, and we will share those questions just now with you. So the first question is, according to Eurostat, what is the percentage of EU 27 population under the age of 30? Let's see how it's going with the answers. We are hoping you are in Slido. You can find the link and also the hashtag in the chat. Please join Slido because the main communication today will happen through Slido. We can see some results are coming in, and most of you are saying 32% or 63%. I think we have received. Okay, so I can see that more people are coming in Slido. We are just still waiting for more people to join, and we have received the answers now, and it's 32%. Those who answered 32% is the correct answer. And the last question, just to start now, is based on your experience, describe in one word the role of youth in the post-war reconstruction process. So please describe this in one word. What is the role of youth organizations in this reconstruction process? We are waiting for your replies so we can see. Participation is one of the answers. We are still waiting for some replies to come in so we can see. Just reminding you, so you can find the link and hashtag in the chat. Please join us in Slido. I can see answers coming in. Thank you very much. So some of them, so change makers, rebuilding sustainable future. So we can see from these words what is the role for youth organizations in the reconstruction process, and we can deduce that it's important and crucial to build our future together and better. Thank you very much for submitting your answers. We're going to move now to our first panel. Thank you for joining Slido, and keep please joining it. So we're going to move to our first panel, Dimension of the War in Ukraine and New Youth Realities. And we have distinguished speakers today joined us. And I would like to start with Madame Natalia Stevchuk, Chairwoman of the Ukrainian Youth Council since 2021, and she's currently working on different thematic areas, among which there are the adaptation of EU Youth Dialogue for the Eastern Partnership countries, international youth work, youth participation and advocacy, national youth policy, as well as regional development, formal education. Natalia, thank you very much for joining us today. You're very much welcome. Please, the floor is yours.
First of all, thank you so much for invitation. I hope you hear me well, as I'm from home office and there might be some internet problems. Regarding the youth in the reconstruction process, let me just give the brief overview what was happening since the full-scale invasion and what was the role of youth organization. Youth organizations, they were the one who had flexibility to start fast response and be active in the first days of invasion. Most of the international donors of UN structures, many other foundations, they were thinking how to take their staff in more secure place, and actually grassroots initiatives through their personal contacts, through the diaspora or some foundations abroad, they were gathering the support and delivering it into the cities which actually needed it. Therefore, like most of the typical activities which are familiar for you as for European countries, for the peaceful times, it was stopped on non-understandable or which period of time. And most of our predictions were that till the end of the year, at least, humanitarian aid will be like the biggest question, the top question and top priority for most of the youth organizations. At the same time, in the western part of Ukraine, a lot of organizations started to establish shelters for internally displaced people, and also organize some kind of reintegration events for children and for in general for young people and for adults as well, because people who are coming from directly affected by war zones, many of them, for them it was difficult how to get into new normal and how to continue the life from the scratch. Also, we should to take into account that education in Ukraine right now it's totally online. So that's another challenge of being in COVID realities for past several years, and also continue to study being somewhere hidden in the bombing shelters, or just in the house and hearing bombs not far from your city, or siren alarm clocks and so on. Right now, there is a question from youth organizations how to continue their activity, because we had the problem when many international donors were coming way and forward and asking all the time the same questions. What are the needs of youth organizations? What we can do? And imagine 10 or 15 donors and organization who is trying to survive with limited financial resource and answering this question. It's not fair to do this all the time. We even had the issue when some of the youth organizations, the one with quite big capacity and well-known names, they were complaining that when it comes to the financial support of grassroots initiatives, it becomes really difficult, and mostly international donors are in favor of hiring some new people to train Ukrainians, to help Ukrainians, but people who are already in Ukraine, they are forgotten. And also it should be taken into account that the question of refugees, which is quite important, refugees in EU, it was pushed forward, but at the same time, many of the programs were not focusing directly on young people in Ukraine and the support of youth organizations, not the support of government, not the support of local authorities and their capacities, but actually youth organizations. I can give example how martial law affects youth field. From the information which we received from the Ministry of Youth and Sport, there is a threat that ministry can be liquidated in the future if there will be not enough financing. It can be argument for the donors to put more financing directly to the Ministry of Youth and Sport. But at the same time, most of the Europeans know well what is the term of shrinking space for civic society. When it comes to the wartime, it feels much more how is this shrinking space for civic society, like what sides it has. I have a colleague actually from our board member, like she's board member and also member of our organization, which wanted to open youth center in Zhytomyr. Zhytomyr, it was one of the districts which also had some problems and was influenced by occupation, not occupation, but some war times. And right now they have problems of receiving from local authorities permission to use the room for establishing the youth center. They only need the room. Donors are giving the financing, but they cannot move it forward because local authorities say youth is not the biggest priority. And in these cities, there is already a huge number of internally displaced people, of young people who want to do something with their lives. When it comes to the young people, yes, one of the first questions, it's the question of how to find the work. But another question, it's self-development and self-identification, what I want to do with my life. And do I want to have my life linked to Ukraine, or it's easier just to move in already developed states and not to be involved in the reconstruction process. Therefore, I think one of the most the biggest challenges of the reconstruction, it's mental health of so I had my time hour. I'm trying to wrap up as I was introduced just 7 minutes. One of the biggest issues is mental health support and mental health burnout, especially among youth activists who are running the marathon already for 4 months and will continue to do this in next months and also during the reconstruction process. And it's general the human resource who is educated, who is with professional qualification, and who is ready to stay in the country and restart its renovation, and who is ready to work as a watchdog under the reforming processes and under the reconstruction processes, so it will be not influenced so much by political interests, especially taking into account that 2023 it will be the challenging year, also not because of the war, but also because of the possible elections in Ukraine. So it's 2023 or 2024. And I do believe that EU candidate status for Ukraine, it's a really good framework which can help to draft a concrete action plan how the reconstruction process should be done and what is the role of youth and youth organizations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia, for your presentation, and thank you very much for raising really important questions how we could improve this process, assisting youth organizations in Ukraine. So thank you very much. So I will remind everyone has a chance to raise questions to Natalia. Just please go to Slido and you can raise these questions, and we will turn to Natalia right after our next speaker. And our next speaker, I would like to welcome Angelica. Angelica, as far as I know, you have joined us from Sweden, and you are with one of our EESC members, Louise, together. Thank you very much once again for joining, and thank you very much for your courage to share your experience, your personal experience. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope that you hear me.
You will.
Say something if you hear me.
Yes, we can hear you very well. Angelica, we can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Angelica. I am from Ukraine, and I am here in Sweden. It's more than 3 months. As far as I understood, I was asked to talk about my daily life in Ukraine before and after the war. My everyday life was constant study. From the 1st to 7th grade, I attended grammar school, and there I woke up in the morning and studied until the evening. I went to bed very late because I had to do my homework. After the 7th grade, I went to lesson, but also studied all the time. In my spare time at the weekends, I used to watch movies, cook, or make handcrafts. But I didn't have much free time at weekends, and I spent it all on study because school demanded. Education in Ukraine is designed so that you have a lot of homework and you have to do it all. I have 17 subjects, and each subject I have its own homework that I have to do. Now I want to tell you what my day before the war was look like. The lesson where I studied was quite far from my home, so I woke up beforehand. I woke up at 5 a.m., got ready, and went to the bus stop at 6:30. The lesson started at 8:15, and I had to take 2 buses, one for 20 minutes and one for 10 minutes. The buses are always packed full in the morning. All the people have to go to the work. So the buses are so packed that people are literally standing on top of each other. Once I was pushed so hard on the bus that I couldn't breathe. So from that time, I tried to take it earlier and to get earlier to school, to be in school in time. At school, I had 7 or 8 lessons in a day, one lesson for 45 minutes, 20 minutes for lunch. We took food with us because we don't have any dining room at the lesson. School ended at 3:45 p.m. and I got home at around 5 p.m. because the buses were also full in the evening, or because always going out from work. By 7 o'clock, I had time to change the clothes and get something to eat. And from 7 to 9, I did my homework. Sometimes I even went to bed without doing it because I couldn't do it in time. I couldn't stand it physically. On the weekends, I spent the whole Saturday doing with my homework. Since it was a weekend, I could sleep until 10 and get good night's rest. I'm sorry. Then I have breakfast and started my lessons. Most of the time I had homework left on Sunday as well, and I worked on it for half of a day. And if there was a time, I'd do something I liked. I watch movies, watch lectures on psychology, read books on psychology, cook something, or listen to music. There wasn't much time left, so most of the time I had to choose one thing. Unfortunately, in my opinion, education in Ukraine is not organized correctly at all. While I'm here in Sweden, I noticed a lot of nuances. Children have a lot of free time. They meet each other very often, go out, and everyone has hobbies in addition to school. Some big hobby like hockey, football, horseback riding, swimming, something they do hard but with their own pleasure. No one is forcing them and they have the time for it. We call it a big hobby in Ukraine because in Ukraine, if you do anything not in school time, you often sacrifice your studies and education. You get low grades and marks in Ukraine. In Ukrainian education, it's unfortunately more important than knowledge. That's why it is very hard to make an exams for us to pass exams because we are always working for the grade, for good, excellent mark. So your project will be perfect, you will spend a lot of time on it, but you will get good grade, but in the end, you will know nothing. I always meet my friends at school, and with those from outside my school, I meet only on holidays. We have holidays in autumn, 1 week, and in spring also. In winter, we have 2 weeks during the New Year and Christmas. I went to school here in Reconstruction School, but unfortunately it was not so good because I didn't understand the language. I spoke to my classmates in English. It's comfortable to use English, but not always for them because they are connecting in Swedish. I also had the Ukrainian lessons online, but it was not so good either because it was lots of alarm in our town. That's why they stopped the studying many times during the day. Now the summer holidays are coming. Since I finished the 9th grade here, I have to continue my studies at the gymnasium. I have taken the exam for admission to the International Baccalaureate at Cathedral School in Skora. It's a program in English and I can study the straight without spending all my time to learn Swedish. I will get my test results on the 1st of July and I really hope that I will study there because it's a great opportunity for me to study straight now. Here we are living in Grestorp in Swedish family, me, my mother and my sister. We are living with Barbara and Göran Forsman. They are very kind and we are lucky that we are with them. I also have my own room here, what I'm very happy about, that I have my own place. My day here starts at 9. I make myself breakfast and then make plans for the day, just like in Ukraine. watch films, watch lectures on psychology, cook, learning Swedish, doing my English better, and go to bed at 10 o'clock. Also, here I have an opportunity to go to the swimming pool, so I'm really glad about it. I try to go there once a week, and I'm also writing a book. I may sound strange, it may sound strange or weird, but I love writing down the first classes. I often won Olympiads because I had the best text. Louise came to visit me earlier last month to invite and tell me about your EU event. During her visit, I told her all about our journey with my mother and sister when we arrived to Sweden, when the war was started. We couldn't go straight to Sweden, so we crossed the border to about 5 countries. And there I tell how we did it and what the difficulties were. And she gave me an idea to write a book about it. Actually, that's what I have been doing for 3 weeks now. It's half finished, and so I also translated it from the English to Swedish. Now, unfortunately, with the help of translator, but I think and I hope that I will not need it in the future because I'm trying to learn Swedish now.
Thank you very much, Angelica, for sharing your experience, and I'm really happy you have a chance to express yourself and as well enjoy your days in Sweden. Thank you, Louise, for hosting this family and providing all the support needed. Thank you very much, Angelica, and we are hoping and wishing you a very good day ahead of you as well. Thank you very much once again. Now we're gonna, since we have some speakers with really busy agendas, we're gonna invite now Madame Sabine Verheyen, who is the member of the European Parliament, to provide her statement, and then we go to Q&A session. So please put your questions in Slido. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for inviting me for today's workshop. I think you are dealing with a very important issue, the question on how the youth situation is, not just in Ukraine, but also in general in Europe. You know, this year is dedicated as the European Year of Youth. And so we want to bring into the focus on the European level, especially in the European Parliament, also the situation of young people in Europe, and especially now under the circumstances of the war and the post-war situation we hopefully have soon, that we also take a focus on how to deal and how to support young people in Ukraine. A decade of austerity measures combined with the extremely hard consequences of COVID-19 pandemic and closures have had devastating impact on the young people who were already structurally more vulnerable. And especially now, in addition to all these problems that we were already facing in the past, the war comes in addition to the young Ukrainian people. Being in a situation of being refugees, being in the situation of living in a war area, there are very big challenges and impacts to the life of the young persons. I believe that we must reconstruct and strengthen the endangered link with our youth, for they are not only the future, but also vital actors in constructing the present. And that's the reason why, even in very difficult times, we have always to keep on the contact with young people, to listen to them, what they need, what kind of support is necessary. And therefore, I will join the European Commission and the member states in congratulating the enthusiasm with which young people throughout Europe, but also in Ukraine, have embraced the European Year of Youth, encouraging and engaging and actually constructing a new culture of dialogue, a true partnership between young people, youth organizations and policymakers at all levels. Throughout the thousands of activities we have meanwhile in the European Year of Youth, that are more than 3,500, you have shown that you still have the trust and the ambition to engage and share your bright ideas on how you see the realization of your potential. Therefore, I would like to call upon all the partners to continue their support to young people and youth organizations on the different places. For example, the Conference for the Future of Europe's conclusions contains a number of priorities for young people that we as European policymakers have to carry on and into realization, and that is namely stronger social justice and protection for young people through improved labor legislation and working and traineeships conditions. Secondly, improved access to safe digital technologies to close the digital divide and allow an equal access to all young people to education. Third, we want to have a safe and secure environmental and sustainable environment where young people will be able to fully develop their creativity and potential. And it was already mentioned, the question of mental health is also one of the big five, I always call them, issues the young people raised themselves in several conferences as the main topics. And I think this is a result of several issues. It's first the fear for future that we have facing the climate change, the environmental problems we are standing in, and also the societal changes we are facing. Secondly, throughout the COVID pandemic, social contacts were not possible in the way young people needed for their own also mental development. And third, now the situation with the war. If you are standing in the situation yourself, like the Ukrainian young people do, or also the people in Europe facing a situation that never expected that it could be a reality in Europe, because we grew up with many, many years of peace. And now suddenly war is back again through the aggression of Russia towards Ukraine. And we don't know how it will end, what will be the next steps. And that makes young people fearful. And I think that's clear in the situation where you don't see where your future will lead you to. As chair of the CULT committee, I've always worked in a close cooperation with young people and the youth organizations, not only through truly consulting them on legislation, but also opening a fora for debate. And that's the reason why I'm quite happy also to debate today with youngsters, with young people from Ukraine, to hear from their daily life, what they are facing when they are in the situation that they had to leave their country and now facing educational problems, the situation for their own development in foreign countries, in countries where they are welcome, but which have other systems and different circumstances. And I think that is something we have to work on and take a focus on also under the aspect of European Year of Youth. What is the situation for young people who had to leave their home country, had to live in a new society where a new language is spoken? And I think also to think about perspectives for them when they might go back one day to their home country, to help them set up adequate life in their country, and to help up setting up infrastructure and possibilities for young people. I understand that there is currently no long-term sustainable structural support for youth organizations at the moment, especially in these critical situations. Of course, the situation, if Ukraine is and its dramatic consequences have very strong impact on young people, in particular those who remained in the country, but also the million refugees. In a series of meetings dedicated to the war in Ukraine, the CULT committee has asked the Commission to develop reinforced mechanisms for initiating projects on youth in the current Erasmus+, to include Ukrainian youngsters in the Erasmus+ program, to support language skills and to support also educational skills in the member states of the European Union, where they have a lot of Ukrainian refugees, and especially children and young people, to have access to universities, to have access to schools, to have the possibility to learn in the own curricula of Ukraine if they are shortly before their exams, to find possibilities to also use online tools for finalizing education and many other projects. We open up funds for this and support for the member states. And furthermore, I'm convinced that it is urgent to ensure a safe spaces and opportunities for young people in Ukraine and youth participation and inclusion. And I consider young people's possibility to build democratic structures in all areas affected and beyond. But last but not least, I believe we should increase the resources dedicated to intercultural dialogues, to the exchange between youngsters from Europe and the Ukraine, especially after the decisions that were taken on the several levels for bringing Ukraine as a candidate state for the European Union. I think it is important, especially to involve the young generation in the exchanges so that we can set up renewing also the engagement we have with young people. So thank you very much that I could take part. I have to excuse myself, but my next meeting started already. So I hope that you will have fruitful discussions and that we can work together with the young people, especially from Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Maikayan, for your intervention, and thank you for emphasizing mental health issues that was also mentioned by Natalia, and for proposing some directions further. Thank you very much. They will be taken into account. Now we're gonna keep going with institutional dimension, and then we're gonna go with Q&A session. We do have some questions already, both for Natalia and also for Angelica. But so let's keep with institutional dimension and then with questions. Now I would like to take the floor, Mr. Martin Mulek, policy coordinator of the support group for Ukraine from the European Commission. Please, Mr. Mulek, could you please take the floor now?
Yes. Hello. Good morning. I hope you can hear and see me well. Okay, that's great. Sometimes I fail on technology and then I fail dramatically. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I will maybe use 5 to 10 minutes of your time to explain a little bit from the European Commission side on where we are in terms of Ukraine, our support to Ukraine, our support to the people of Ukraine and also the youth of Ukraine. I work in a group that is called the Support Group for Ukraine, which is a kind of a task force to help Ukraine before the 24th of February to approach gradually to the European integration. Now, since the start of the war and the start of Russia's invasion, to help as much as possible for Ukraine to get through the war and to be able to reconstruct and rebuild afterwards. I work in this field now for 2-3 years, and I learned a lot about Ukraine. And one of the most important things I learned about Ukraine, that in my lifetime there were already 3 revolutions in Ukraine: in 1991, in 2004-5, the Orange Revolution, and then the Euromaidan in 2013 and 14. And it was always the youth and the young people that were carrying the protests, and they were pushing, let's say, also the old guard and society forward for reform, for modernization, for freedoms. And it's amazing to see, and I think we don't have any other country where that actually those revolutions were successful 3 times. And now we are in a counter-attack by Russia to stop those freedoms. And again, we see many young people suffering from that, reacting to that, but keeping on fighting for their freedoms inside of Ukraine, outside of Ukraine. I was very inspired and also very sad when I heard, for example, last week that Roman Radrushne, died as a soldier. One of young people who was in the Euromaidan right from the start, I think at the age of 15, 16, and was keeping up his efforts to reform, to protect the environment, and who now died as a soldier, I think at the age of 22, 23, near Isium. So there's, from our side here in Europe, only, we can only appreciate and really admire the fighting spirit and the strength of the youth of Ukraine to get through those difficult times. And in our own way, we want to help as much as possible to support you on that. But actually, the future of Ukraine is mainly in Ukrainian hands. We Europeans can only support you as much as possible, but all our help will be nothing without the support of civil society of Ukraine, the government of Ukraine, and everybody in Ukraine, and also outside of Ukraine. So from what we are doing, I could list a lot of activities, to help the Ukrainian government, civil society, to support. What we did in our group, we have been supporting Ukrainian civil society organizations before the start of the war. And we noticed when the war started that actually the first ones to work were the very organizations we have been working before. So basically, they dropped their pens, they dropped the long-term projects and focus on the immediate support that is needed right now. And we were telling them, okay, you tell us what you want to change, we are fine. The funding, the money stays the same. Please go ahead, do as much as you can. But also, I have to say, civil society is doing as much as it can. There is an issue of burnout now after 4 months and exhaustion. And this exhaustion is very deep with many in the country and also outside the country trying to help. And to be honest, I don't have a clear solution how to get out that, because this exhaustion will probably last still for some time. And we are also working night and day to support also from our side. But we are in this still for quite a long time, because we don't see that the war will stop very soon. Maybe it will stagnate, maybe it will calm down a little bit, but still there's no solution that will come with peace in the next months. I'm a little bit pessimistic on that. So we really need to focus as well in the long term to support as much as we can, not for this immediate support, what we did in February or March, but really to make sure Ukraine remains standing on its feet in the months and years to come. And this is also including the youth of Ukraine in the country, but also outside. One point here I want to say is also, you mentioned that since 1 week, Ukraine has candidate country status for the European Union, which is a little bit of a game changer. It changes a little bit of how our institutions work. We have now meetings with all the agency, all the programs of the European Union. And basically our message is Ukraine is not only a partner country as it was before, it is now a candidate country to join the European Union. We need to see how we can all include Ukraine in those programs that we have, with the view that Ukraine will be profiting, and its citizens will be profiting of all programs. This is in the youth area for Erasmus, but this is also for all other programs as well, on education, on learning, cultural exchange, and so on. So we will be doing our most to, as far as we can, already treat Ukraine as a close friend and somebody who will be soon joining us in the European Union. In practice, maybe that will take some years, but our spirit is there, that support is there, and it's very important for the future of Europe that Ukraine and Ukraine's youth is involved and takes part of all our discussions already now. This candidate country status is also important, because I remember what Natalia was mentioning about the freedom and civil rights inside of Ukraine, because we are also now monitoring to ensure that the European values, fundamental rights, freedom of expression are continue to be ensured in Ukraine. Also in terms of the martial law, and we will monitoring and will be reporting about that, and we will voice very clearly, and it's also in Ukraine's interest, in the Ukrainian government's interest, that those any issues on fundamental rights are being addressed by the government. And we'll be watching this very closely, and we will also raise that with the European government. So we are happy to receive also information for you. Please let us know if you see any issues here. The last thing I want to mention here is then the reconstruction of Ukraine, because there will be many conferences, there will be structures and discussions, which is maybe at the moment still a little bit theoretical, but this is something that needs to be done to provide money and provide support to rebuild Ukraine after the war, and to start as soon as possible, probably still before the war formally ends. So next week we'll have a big conference in Switzerland where everybody will come and discuss how to do that best together. And and there will be a lot of work going on over the summer on this topic. What will be very important are two things. One thing is that this will be done together with Ukrainians. So it's not like, we come in or from the West telling everybody this is done like this and like that, but this will need Ukrainian participation, not only of the government, but also of every civil society actor that says this needs to be done, this needs to be done, this is our opinion, and we have to do that as citizens of Ukraine, to build up the country, to make it a country, and this is the second important point, a country where we see a future and where we can live as for long term and can build our own lives, and where we have our life decisions that we can make and our life choices that we can make for our own lives. And this is what we also need to do quickly. We see a lot of people have left Ukraine, and I know everybody would like to return as soon as possible, but this also, we need to build bridges and build the possibilities to come back and to build a life there. And as we've seen with other refugee crises in the past, the longer you stay away, it might become more difficult to come back in the long term. And those people will be missing in Ukraine to rebuild the country to its full strength. So this is also our duty in the European Union, to help Ukrainians abroad as refugees to make the best out of their current situation. And this is great. And I hope the member states and the communities, civil society in EU is helping as much as possible. But we also need to provide possibilities to come back and to build lives there. So you have the freedom to choose, and you will have full possibilities to come back to Ukraine and also to continue life there. So that's very short from my side. Unfortunately, I need to leave in around 10 minutes. So if there are any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, write me anytime with your concerns, your questions, and I'm very happy to engage further. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mulek. I can see that in the Teams chat, actually, Natalia, she tries to reach out for you, so maybe you can get into contact and you could discuss further issues or concerns. Thank you very much once again for joining us today and for emphasizing also really important questions like mental health issues, Erasmus+, and also educational programs and skills needed. So thank you very much once again, and now I would like to move to our next speaker, Mr. Jaroslav Kupust, who is an ambassador, special envoy for the Eastern Partnership, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic. I would like to mention that from the 1st July, Czech Republic will take over the presidency of the EU Council. You are very, very welcome, Mr. Kupust, for today's webinar. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I hope that the technique works and you can hear me. Really, I'm so pleased that I can use this invitation to address the group, and I'd like to share the view of one of the countries which is really trying to demonstrate the solidarity and is taking this this conflict very, very seriously in terms of refugees from Ukraine. Maybe per capita we are having one of the biggest, maybe the biggest share of refugees. So I would share with you the national point of view, but then as it was mentioned, we are heading to the presidency in a couple of days, and of course there are plenty of plans for Ukraine and plenty of plans for reconstruction, so I will address this. The first, this national dimension. Indeed, this brutal, unprovoked, illegal aggression of Russia against Ukraine is taken very seriously in Czechia. And this is not just because it is brutal and it is so terrible, but also that it reminds us two historical traumas, two historical situations when Czechia was liberated, so-called liberation, twice. Once there was a Nazi Germany who liberated, or it was called as a liberation of German-speaking population in the borderlands of Czechoslovakia. Very similar situation to what's happening in Donbass and the so-called liberation of Russian-speaking population. And also there was the so-called liberation in 1968 when 500,000 of Soviet troops were rolling on tanks to Czechoslovakia, and under the pretext that they are liberating the country from Nazi elements. And basically that was a Prague Spring, hoping for more democracy and for more connections with the free world. So basically the two historical situations are now happening at one place in Ukraine. So the sensitivity of all layers of the Czech society are very sensitive to it. And the wave of solidarity to Ukraine is really unseen and incredible. We are hosting refugees, we are delivering arms, we are providing humanitarian assistance, we are supporting we were supporting the European perspective and want to help Ukraine to join the European Union. Of course, there will be a long process, it has to be said, and Ukraine will have to fulfill many conditions, but this is the future, really. We believe that Ukraine will be part of the European Union one day, and we need to be patient and work hard, all of us. So the Czech presidency will have from Ukraine priority for whole 6 months, we will assume. This was confirmed by the government that we will dedicate a lot of energy to Ukraine. And here again, I would go maybe to the Czechoslovak history or Czech history to demonstrate how young people can play an important role. Maybe you have heard that in 1989, there was a true liberation. The liberation from, let's say, Russian colonial dominance over Czechoslovakia, and the Velvet Revolution at that time happened. That was a revolution which was started and which was driven by young people. It was driven by students. I was at that time in the second year of my university, and I was part of all this big movement. And it was a formative moment for my life. And maybe that was also the reason why I joined then Czech diplomatic service, because it was really possible to see in the streets of Czech cities and Prague and Ostrava and others that young people can make change, that they can be part of the historical process. And it was very, very inspirative. So I believe that really youth and young people, they should be involved in the current events and also in the reconstruction process. On reconstruction process, I would say that this discussion is already going on. There was the communication of the European Commission as a first document. There will be Lugano, the Switzerland conference, which was already mentioned. So it started before the Czech presidency start, and it will go on long after the Czech presidency ends. But I think that the governance structure and the main principles and main layout will be really shaped during the upcoming 6 months. So we are really determined to dedicate a lot of energy to the reconstruction process to make it right and contribute. On youth, we would like to dedicate a couple of events during the presidency. So not only reconstruction as such, but also on youth. In Prague, 11th of July, there will be 4th Youth Conference, which will be organized by the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum and strongly supported by the Speaker of the Czech Parliament, Mrs. Pekarová-Adamová. And the conference will be dedicated to the revitalization of democracy. So this is just one example how we would like to involve youth into the discussion. And this youth conference is the Eastern Partnership Youth Conference. So there will be Ukrainian voices and the voices from the Eastern Europe. One thing I would like to say on the topic of youth and reconstruction. When we say reconstruction, many people start to believe that it is about rebuilding destroyed houses, buildings, railways, and other pieces of hard infrastructure. But it is much more. It will be about reforms, about preparing the country for the future, including for the European future, for the membership in the European Union. To build a modern, technologically fit, digitalized, strategically resilient society. And here I really believe that the young people, then they can have a say, not only as a youth organizations, but as the most dynamic part of the civil society organizations. And here we will be working very intensively as the Czech presidency with civil society organizations. There will be the annual assembly of Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum in Prague, I think 5th to 7th of December. We will also dedicate a lot of activities to the resilience of the media and other ways of resilience. We also would like to increase a cooperation of universities. So we are now thinking about some systemic tool, how to do it in the Eastern Partnership, and especially with the emphasis on Ukrainian universities. Speaking about the civil society, I was really struck when all this refugee crisis happened in Czechia, and really there was hundreds and thousands of Ukrainians coming to the country. And that was, again, youth organizations, students, young people who were activists, who were volunteering, and who were helping with that crisis. And also, thanks to them, we were able to manage all this crisis situation or extraordinary situation. So basically, the activity is, and just the courage of the young people. This is what is really needed. So if I would sum my message to some very short sort of call, I would say, be active, don't be shy, go for change, work hard, have the courage to think about your country, Ukraine, but also call it good advice and experience. It's really young people who have to believe that they are able to shape the future, and in democracy it is possible. So the Czech presidency will be ready to support activities if there will be proactive and courageous proposals. Don't be shy coming to us, and we're ready to cooperate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kofos, for your intervention, and thank you for emphasizing priorities for the Czech presidency regarding Ukraine, and also specifically young people and youth organizations. Thank you very much once again. Now we do have several questions, but we're going to leave them after the last dimension, since we need to catch up with timing a bit. So now we're going to hear some really good interventions from civil society. And now I would like to start with Madame Kinga Testovic, who is a volunteer at the Polish NGO, and she has been working with the organization since the beginning of the conflict, and she has done a record number of hours. Madam Kinga, could you please take the floor now?
Good evening, good morning, everyone. So I'm now in the room in which we held our first something like daycare for kids. So it was we are the first daycare like for kids in what was held in Lublin. The war started, and we in 2 days started working here with Ukrainian kids. So we had such a long process to find our place to help these kids, and the kids rotated since they came to us, and it was a lot of them day by day. And also we have at first a lot of volunteers, but I think that the volunteers, I think that the energy that the people had to help is like they have done less. I don't know, how they may be burned out. And also like people who only have this passion inside them only help them like so long. So about all the activities and all things that we do as a Fundacja Strefa Dorastania. So it's like we look for the projects, because we still like a non-profit foundation. We don't have our money, we don't have our budget. We make collabs with Lublin Volunteer Center, with Urząd Miasta Lublin, and a lot of foundations. Also Homofaber help us with organizing some Polish lessons, and a lot of institutional culture institutions help with workshops for kids, the Polish lessons for kids, and also now I'm an employee of Fundacja Spinka, so it's also financed with UNICEF. And we have now more materials for kids, more biggest budget for working with them. So about the working with kids and all happenings we had in Lublin, we held once a month like a big integrational event. So when the Polish artist meets Ukrainian artist, foundations and some Ukrainian bakery shops. So we held this like events once monthly. It's made by, it's organized by Lublin City. We took a part in the last one when our fund, when Ola, the fund, the president of our foundation, was making some workshops, and we have also we have big exclusions for the Ukrainian people. So it's a lot of translators now having a job to help the people in doing their paperwork and helping them make the PESEL number, the Polish documents. The kids are going to school when they have extra Polish lessons, and still people are somewhere living for free in hotels, on or some apartments are free to rent for Ukrainian people, just for help. So I will tell now more about our daycare, or how we call it Świetlica. So we invite all the kids, Ukrainian kids, to our place. We held this in Galeria Labyrinth. It's modern art gallery, and they made us a special room who looks for me now like I feel like in kindergarten. So the kids are a lot of supplies of toys, of art stuff to like we can hold proper time, like proper workshops and very productive workshops with them, and knowing that they would be safe with us, because this place, when we held the our events at first, was not very kids friendly. So now we have great place, great support, but I think it's still not enough, because every day we want kids to have something to eat, something to drink, and we don't have this. Like sometimes we buy it from our money, but it's take a lot of time. It's time consuming, and it's very also hard to work with them, because the kids have traumas, and sometimes we see like they've been so a lot, so we need more experts working with us. We need psychologists to make workshops with them, because we still see that we can help the kids, but better, and every day we try to find the best way to help them, and we see the sometimes aggressive behavior, and some kids are still afraid of flying aircrafts, and when the balloon pops, one kid starts crying because it reminds them of a bombing in his city. So it's very very hard to sometimes to work with them. But I think like our kids, when the kids that I'm working with are the kids who are in very good situations. I was 2 days at Lublin Hospital where our people, the mothers with kids from the special hospital for the disabled kids, and these kids they see the world more than these kids that with whom I work now, because I did work with the kids there they were victims of a bombing, that the whole faces was covered in the bruises, because and also his mother was very very hurt from this, and also these kids one was blind, the second one was half deaf, and it was a lot of kids there who need even more people with high competencies to help them. I think like Polish people, all of them, help very well and have so much to offer for these people, but we still need some more, and some people are just tired, and we need some energy and some new people who will help us helping these kids, these parents, because it's also cultural shock, and it's also very hard to them because they leave the country. We will never know when they will come back. And from me, I think it's all.
Thank you very much, Kinga, for sharing the experience really from on the ground, and we're hoping you can stay till the end of the webinar, since we are going to discuss proposals which could be taken further to support your daily experience. So now we're going to move to Mr. Horia Onita, President of the National Alliance of Students Organization in Romania. Dear Mr. Onita, can you hear us? And could you please take the floor now and share your experience? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. Just 1 second. Okay, thank you. I'm Horia Onita. I'm president of the National Alliance of Student Organizations in Romania, the National Union of Students in Romania, representing students at national and European Romanian students at national and European level. First of all, I'm really glad to be here today. It was mentioned about what the EESC can do in order to support the youth reconstruction, and of course, this is obvious. I appreciate the fact that we are having this networking opportunity to discuss the problems and to engage the stakeholders in order to understand the issues, because we as an organization which aims to help Ukrainian students and youth, we of course want to also better understand their needs and to act upon them. And this session is one of the actions that European Economic and Social Council can do. Since the outbreak of war and the Russian aggression, we as National Union of Students, together with our colleagues from Europe, European Students' Union, and other National Union of Students from Poland, from Slovakia, from Hungary, we work together with the Ukrainian association, the UAS, the Ukrainian Association for Students, because of course this was the time to actually show the youth solidarity and do the work. And what we did, and we are still doing, despite the natural and unfortunate humanitarian fatigue, to say so, this is what we also expect from the European Union to do. There were many years when this solidarity has been mentioned. There are tremendous efforts which are taken, but again, taking into consideration this fatigue, to say so, it's important to remember that the problems didn't stop, not at all. There are great struggles in front of us, and we have a duty to support and to be there for our colleagues. I would briefly mention what we are doing, what is our experience in this area, and also at the next part I will come with a proposal of what we as National Union of Students and youth organizations in Europe can do to support Ukrainian students and youth outside of Ukraine, and of course in Ukraine after the reconstruction process. Firstly, we coordinated at the European level, at national level, and at local level to provide information and guidance, especially on the basic needs, the direct needs, on how to access higher education in our country, and of course on psychological counseling. This was one of the greatest issues we faced, because we didn't have so many resources on that area, and also translation opportunities, but after all, we managed to create the ecosystems at local level that provided at university level accommodation, food, psychological counseling, and if the case, the opportunity to enroll in higher education in Romania. And we shared this experience with our colleagues from across the border. We also helped regarding information together with the associations from Ukraine. Unfortunately, initially the response was not so swift from at least from the Romanian authorities, and we had to be there to actually inform our peers from Ukraine on how to seek support, shelter, asylum in Romania. We also provided the donations, basic supplies, and supporting the international protections and enrollment in higher education. At European level, a very important thing that happened, apart of course, apart from the candidate membership of Ukraine, we and now I'm speaking as together at European level, the European Students' Union, we also lobbied for the exclusion of Russia and Belarus from the European higher education area. Unfortunately, it wasn't an exclusion yet; it was only a suspension. But this was necessary in order to send a message, and not also to send a message, but to actually provide that we adhere to the values enshrined in the European higher education area. And we also lobbied for Erasmus Plus funds for student refugees from Ukraine. Here, it is a very important issue in the reconstruction process to think about brain drain, because a lot of students came into our countries. A lot of Ukrainian students came to our countries, and they are enrolled in higher education. But this can prove to be a difficult obstacle to overcome by the Ukrainian academia, because the issue of brain drain is obvious. That's why we think that, and we propose that after the war ends, there is a reverse Erasmus Plus scholarship provided by the European Union in order to actually help those students who are displaced to go back to Ukraine, to provide scholarship for them to enroll again in Ukrainian higher education system, because otherwise, of course, it would be a very lost intellectual output for Ukraine, which would prove difficult in the reconstruction process. We also provided different kind of files with information in order to help people fleeing Ukraine, and coordinated on this area. At national level, and here I would stand a bit more on the subject. We provided direct support at border. We were at 3 checkpoints in Romania, and we coordinated the provision of accommodation in student dorms and food from student canteens. We have 2 big struggles, to say so. The first one is regarding the recognition process. Unfortunately, even though we are in the same European higher education area, the recognition process was not so smoothly as it should have happened. There are several cases in which Ukrainian students weren't able to enroll, and to recognize first their studies in Ukraine and then enroll. And we will have the same problem in the reconstruction process. We have to ensure that the automatic recognition is in place, and that students going back to Ukraine after this war will be able to have their studies, their provisional studies in Europe recognized, and they will be able to continue their studies without any barrier in Ukraine. We also, a part of the recognition, we also lobbied for scholarships. Unfortunately, at least in Romania, there are not so many that have been provided, and we are still struggling on this issue. But as I've said, the reverse process should happen as well, and we should ensure that the European Union has a scheme both for students at risk who come from war areas, in this case Ukraine, to Europe, and also the reverse procedure in the reconstruction process to help ensure that the higher education institutions are actually able, and especially students are actually able to go back and to start their studies again, and then of course to go in the labor market, in the society, etc. There were also some problems we had to mitigate on visa hurdles and settling in Romania. However, what has happened at European level as well, in time we've seen that the authorities eventually understood the big issue that we are facing together as a threat to Europe in itself, and actually moved to better understand and cooperate with NGOs on this area. And we can provide this expertise as well, and not only the expertise but the resources, because we were able to collect funds and to give them directly to students and young people in Ukraine. So we didn't use any intermediates or authorities in that area. We understand that the most pressing issue and the most important issue is that the youth reconstruction would be youth-led. And that's why when we collected funds, we gave them directly to young people, and they are the best to determine what to do with the resources, be them money or other types of resources in the reconstruction process. Right now, we didn't focus on the reconstruction, of course. Unfortunately, we had to focus on providing humanitarian aid, and we also provided resources for protecting Ukraine in the sense of money that were used to buy equipment to help defend the country. But of course, we are already planning and discussing with the other National Union of Students, with the European Students' Union, and with the youth NGOs. We are cooperating on how to actually work and support the youth reconstruction. And basically, there are two avenues which I will address in the next panel. The first one is direct support. We are already planning to actually go to Ukraine when the situation is favorable, and to support the youth reconstruction directly with the resources, with trainings, with direct support. And the other part that we as student NGOs and youth NGOs in Romania are doing, so a part of cooperating directly with the youth NGOs from Ukraine, is to advocate and to lobby the European institutions to provide more support and assistance. And of course, in our area of interest, Erasmus Plus is one of the key instruments. We think that the steps taken are relevant, but yet definitely not enough in order to support the Ukrainian students in this transition. We hope as shorter as possible transition period. And that's what we are gonna do, both in terms of support and lobby, because we have this shared understanding. Our colleagues from Ukraine were together with us at European events. We couldn't even possibly think that they wouldn't be able to actually take part in our meetings anymore and to work together to solve the issues the students face in Europe. But unfortunately, this is the case, and we had to adapt as swiftly as possible to provide relevant aid and to do the work, actually, because it is easy to do the talk, but we struggled, and we wanted to actually do the work in this matter, and we will have to do that as much as it is needed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Onisa, for your presentation. Now I would like to move to Madame Monika Drake, who is an international commissioner of the Polish Scouting and Guiding Association. Due to time constraints, Monika, if you would be so kind, could you please stick to 5 minutes? Thank you very much.
I will do my best to hear me well. So I'm Monika Drake, and I'm the International Commissioner of the Polish Scouting and Guiding Association. And first, very briefly about who we are as the Polish Scouting and Guiding Association. And I'm very happy to bring this perspective today to the discussion. Our organization has 100,000 members and is the largest social and educational organization for young people in Poland. For nearly 100 years, the main goal of ZHP, that is Związek Harcerstwa Polskiego in Polish, has been to support the education of children and young people, girls and boys, by nurturing an environment suitable for their all-round development. We are the part of World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts and World Organization of the Scout Movement, that are the umbrella organizations of the World Scouting and Guiding Movement. Yet ZHP is not just an organization. First and foremost, it's a social movement that builds the positive attitude and strong character. We support the education of young people through values that are relevant with scouting and guiding, such as love to one's country, brotherhood and sisterhood, friendship, service, faith, work ethic, justice, freedom and peace. These values inscribed in the Brownies and Cub Scout Promise and Law and Guidance Scout Promise and Law live in the whole organizational culture and are the key to boost the development of young people through their own paths of setting up the challenges for their own, thanks to which they can develop individually. Traditional and universal values are included in our current programs of packs, troops and units in ZHP that stem from needs and interests and the desires of children and youth. And therefore, that's why I'm speaking about that, because it has been those values that I mentioned that young people, scouts and guides from Poland, but also from Europe and around the world, put into practice in over 4 past months' action in context of war in Ukraine. Values of brotherhood and sisterhood, friendship and service, justice and freedom and peace were especially those motivating young people to act. So thousands of Polish people felt the need to do something. They felt they must be there for others, and it felt almost natural to behave like that in the circumstances given. ZHP has therefore organized and facilitated different levels of support. As you can see, those were, for example, supplies that consisted of collecting, purchasing and distributing hygiene products, water, food, toys, different first aid goods and different dry food, etc. The short and the short-term support consisted on gathering volunteers at the refugee reception centers when people were coming in to the border regions of Poland. That was also to organize the board patrols that had their service at the railway and bus stations, translating, guiding, providing information, redistributing food and other articles. Many people organize themselves on the national level of the organization, but also on a very local level of ZHP. They have mobilized themselves to serve. If you come back to the previous slide, thank you. The immediate support was also connected to coordinating and supporting the humanitarian action offered by other Scout and Guide Association companies and people. We have devoted and disposed the Scout centers, that are the Scout facilities, to local provisional governments, and they were adapted to hosting refugees. And finally, hosting the families of Polish people, of Scouts and Guides, of young people. They opened their houses welcoming refugee families. We have established as well the platform to connect Ukrainian Scouts and Guides with Polish Scouts and Guides families to facilitate this connection. We have also been preparing materials to teach Polish and Ukrainian, but also program activities to facilitate the connection and communication between Ukrainian guests and Polish people. Medium to long-term support, that's the next slide. We consider very important gathering donations, but establishing partnerships and projects. That's also in the core activities. That was the partnership with UNICEF, that is a partnership with UNICEF and WASM, organizing blue dots in cities, getting ready to invite young children from Ukraine at summer camps in Poland. That's also partnership with WEX, organizing psychological and methodological support, welcoming Ukrainian children in the activities of local units, and supporting the projects that aim at serving the community. That is also connected with partnership of Polish Scouting and Guiding Association with Ukrainian Scouting and Guiding Associations, and other scouting and guiding organizations in Europe and worldwide. We've been in touch with them. We've been receiving heartwarming messages and offers to help. We have organized the volunteering actions. That's an example of Germany with other organizations to stand and face the situation together. That is also covering the partnership with other organizations and companies organizing shipments or distribution of funds. All those short, medium, and ongoing long-term solutions made us feel connected in solidarity and active citizens of the world and a part of the global movement. That also proves that in situations like that we are not alone and we have the community. If you move a bit further, that these are just an examples. You can just keep moving through the slides of different places and different activities we have organized. And now, finalizing, now after over 4 months war in Ukraine and lack of peace in Europe are still the reality. So looking ahead, we believe that it's very important to support people who found refuge in Poland, invite them to join scouting and guiding activities, to provide them safe space for their development, growth, well-being, caring about their mental health as well. We're continuing the projects and partnerships. At the same time, we care about the competencies and well-being of existing members of ZHP. Finally, we believe that advocacy and building awareness of how important the peace building is crucial nowadays, and peace as a value is in the heart of global scouting and guiding movements. And we believe our ZHP service and attitude of thousands of adults and young people were a great example of that. We hope that this example and values, friendship, sisterhood, brotherhood, peace and service can become an inspiration and direction also for Ukrainian youth. We hope that those who we met, who were the recipients of our service, who are the recipients of our service throughout the service, will see these values. And our personal example will help them and give them courage to rebuild their communities. By our action, ZHP wants to spread good and inspire Ukrainian children, girls, boys, and adults to believe in a better world, a peaceful world that we can build together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Drake, for your presentation, and thank you for outlining short, medium, and long-term solutions. Thank you very much. And now we're going to move to our last speaker, Madam Patriona, Director of Advocacy and Partnership for the European region of the World Organization of the Scout Movement. Madam Graham, could you please take the floor and intervene?
Great, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the kind invitation, and real congratulations to all of the speakers so far who have really shown how much amazing work is being done by young people and for young people right across the land, across our different countries, and showing that young people really can be at the forefront of responding to a crisis, responding to conflict, responding to war, but also hopefully looking forward to reconstruction and how we build from here. I think really thanks particularly to Monica for her inputs, because I think I can maybe build from that. I won't recover what she has described because of course she's from WAGS, I'm coming from WASM. And so we are sibling organizations, let's say, in the scouting movement. And so I think you've really described so well how Scouts have been at the forefront of responding with guides, of course, to all of the situations across Europe. Poland is a really key example where they have been championing the response effort. But we have many countries in our organization that have tried to uplift and respond to key activities and needs as identified. So we currently, as Monica mentioned, have a partnership with UNICEF, where we're working in particular with Ukraine itself, Moldova, Poland, Czechia, Latvia, Lithuania, Slovakia, Romania, and Hungary, in the concerted efforts to respond where the countries are most affected and have the most refugees seeking support, or internally displaced persons. But I also want to recognise the massive efforts that all the countries across Europe have made from within our movement to gather supplies, to support people affected, provide housing, information, supply distribution, etc. It's been really inspiring to see how young people saw a need and jumped straight in for that response. I think, as Monica described it, we really had so many young people who, for them, it was natural to jump into this response effort because that's what we educate and learn how to do and see the opportunities as they're needed. So we saw, for example, in Slovakia, some scouts went to the border and saw that there were volunteers there, but that there was nobody coordinating the effort. And so they stepped in to help coordinate all of the different civil society organizations that were offering support at the border countries. In Romania, similarly, it started out with 2 or 3 scouts offering just driving to the border because they felt there would be a need. And from there, built an entire structure of support and response. So we've seen huge efforts, people moving to the border, organising, delivering support, but also now we're moving into the medium-term responses where we're working with UNICEF on issues like psychosocial first aid, recognising, as others have brought up, the significant mental health needs, not only of internally displaced persons, of refugee young people, but also of the volunteers who are trying to offer their support to them. So we're offering psychosocial first aid trainings, adapting our educational methods programs to make sure that we can offer contributions that will support those who really need it. So have trauma-informed responses as part of our educational methods, etc., in our summer programs and in our longer-term responses. We're really proud to be able to say that through our data collection in this partnership, so in only these 9 countries, we've supported far more than 500,000 people already through this direct support provision. So that's a huge amount of people that we've been able to provide support to, although it's very sad to say that that support is so desperately needed and there are many more people who need support. As we look to the future, so having outlined and heard a little bit about the Scouts' responses and the guiding responses to the war effort, I think we need to look now into this question of reconstruction and what is it that we can do? How do we move from a conflict setting to reconstruction? Hopefully we will see an end to the war as soon as possible, and we need to be planning already for how we make that response happen. There's a huge risk if we don't include people in the reconstruction effort. The new society, as it will be, won't reflect the needs of young people, and it's a huge opportunity lost if young people aren't included to be a more forward-looking modern society that respects and acknowledges the needs of young people and embeds it intrinsically from the start of the process. Also, the perspective of young people, you know, they're going to care deeply about sustainability, about environmental sustainability, about something that will last for the future. And so their ideas would be very important to bring in. We have seen from the response effort how ready young people are to engage in reconstruction and the youth peace and security efforts. So we need to open doors for this to happen, create youth panels, create different structures. I know in the second session we're intending to look at what are the proposals concretely, but I think we really need to see what the best practices are that already exist of youth engagement and make sure that we move into delivering that through the reconstruction process, through resourcing, financial investment, youth panels, and as has been mentioned, a real investment in peace dialogue, conflict resolution education, and promotion and investment in the same. So I look forward to the continued conversation and thank you so much again for this effort.
Thank you very much, Madam Graham, for your intervention, and I absolutely agree to you what you said, that it's really crucial to compile the best practices of what's out in place already. Taking into account that actually we are under really strict time constraints, We will collect those questions in Slido and we will share them with the speakers, and you will get your answers. And also, there is a functional email if you still have any questions. So functional email will be shared by my colleagues in the chat. That's youthwebinar@eec.europe.eu. If you still have any questions and we are not going to have time to raise them now to our speakers, so please use this email address to raise your questions. So we're gonna now move to our second panel, and as it was mentioned at the very beginning, so the speakers will present their proposals, and I would like to ask you, kindly ask you to present your proposal really shortly in 1 minute, because we will ask the audience to vote for these proposals, and these proposals, the most voted ones, will be taken forward by the EESC for further consideration. So I would like to start with Madame Louise Bravo. Louise, could you please take the floor and just shortly present your proposal?
Thank you so much. So I'm in the same room as Angelica, and our ways crossed the 14th of March when I was in the south of Poland together with a local civil society organization to help Ukrainian refugees. And that's when I met Angelica, and now she's a great friend of mine. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about how we can support youth organizations. To give youth organizations the right conditions to be more resilient and to strengthen their capacity in the reconstruction process, we need to secure sustainable economic support. And this is crucial so that the youth organization can focus on their core activities, such as combating climate crisis, supporting refugees, and becoming schools of democracy for young people in Ukraine and also in the EU. Economic stress for organization could lead to mental health burnout, and every young girl or boy that gets burned out is a loss for our democracy. And I also encourage the EESC to engage young people more into their work, in their everyday work, so we also could get more young people from youth organizations around EU to be more active in the work of the EESC. So this is my statement in a short way. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Louise, for your proposal. Now, Mr. Korea Onisa, could you please present your proposal?
Sure, thank you. Can I have access to the proposal? I mean, the share screen. If not, I can do without, but I'm just...
Yeah, we are solving now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oops. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so our overarching vision is about the youth involved in societal reconstruction, because youth shouldn't be, we shouldn't talk about just about the youth being involved in the youth matters, but the youth being involved in every aspect of society through youth-led sustainable actions. There are 4 key points: rebuilding and enhancing the capacity of youth NGOs, because they should be the one able to identify and promote youth needs. Because if you are thinking about the youth involvement, the key action is to understand and enhance the capacity of young people to empower them. And in this area, we advocate for funding schemes directly to youth organizations in Ukraine and international cooperation through umbrella federations. The second key action is regarding supporting Ukrainian youth wishing to repatriate. This is either for students or in general. as I've talked before, I was mentioning Brain Day and ensuring scholarships from the European level and recognition of temporary studies. So the reverse recognition in order to ensure the smooth access of Ukrainian students and pupils back into school and higher education in Ukraine when they come back. The third key action is regarding the youth-led dimension. So to train people on how to get involved, trainings, and provide support. Mental health is also a key issue here, because if they are not prepared in that sense, they cannot meaningfully engage and understand how can they promote. And lastly, and also provide spaces for them, so youth centers and the reconstruction centers. And the last key action is regarding the international cooperation. Ukraine universities should be directly entered into European alliances, provide the mobility and support the reconstructions of school and universities in Ukraine, because in our perception, education is key, either formal or non-formal education. And if we want to build a sustainable society, we need to start with education and provide basic and higher education to those who are and the resources, the infrastructure for those who are starting school and higher education in after the war in the reconstruction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Onita, for your very concrete proposals. Now I would like to ask Madame Natalia Sevchuk, could you please take the floor and present your proposal? Thank you. Natalia, we cannot hear you. You are muted.
Okay, just one short question. We should propose all three in short, long, and term perspectives, yes?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, wonderful. So in general, first of all, to me it seems that all our proposals, like they are linked to the support of youth organizations. I'm really glad to hear this. My proposals will be quite short because I work with the youth organizations, and mostly youth organizations shout their support to the refugees, to the volunteering efforts, and many things which in Ukraine were not done by the government or local authorities, were done by the youth organizations. Therefore, for me, it seems that investment directly in the institutional support of independent youth-led organizations is the key priority for the sustainable recovery and democracy in Ukraine. In short-term perspective, it's important to keep a level of mental health of youth activists, and especially avoid burnouts, which already seems to happen among leaders, especially not only just youth activists, but also really experienced youth leaders. As it was mentioned before, previous speakers, we already have a number of young men and women who are dying in the front line, and who actually could lead a lot of initiatives and a lot of reconstructive ideas and human resource. It's the one with which we should work and should prioritize this among all others. Because of burnout, as a short response, I do believe that there should be retreats and financial support for the organization of such retreats, especially for Ukrainians who right now in Ukraine and who are not refugees, because refugees, they already receive a lot of support from European Union and a lot of organizations, and people who are left in Ukraine, they in a daily life work, listen at the same time explosion of bombs or alarm sirens, and it's really difficult to work in such conditions. So these retreats should be supervised by professional psychologists, and also in partnership with organizations from EU. And it's important not to run some kind of Zoom activities, because people are already tired of it, and it's not so valuable. And it's important to bring Ukrainian, like those Ukrainians from Ukraine, to some European countries to the nature. It's really easy way how we can support their mental health and how they can continue their work as activists and youth organizations and civic society in general. It's the first. Second, provide finance for the institutional development of youth organizations so they can review their internal work and internal policies, define new priorities, and have space for continuation of their work with their membership. This cost should be really flexible, and organizations should have the choice what is their actual need. Do they need to rent office? Do they need to pay for utilities? Or do they need to provide at least a small salary for the core team? Because otherwise the core team will split because they need to feed their families and they are living in Ukraine and prices are quite high. Third one, it's the role of EU candidate membership for Ukraine and how we can use it as a tool for advocacy and reconstruction process in general. It's a very strategic thing, because right now I already have information that our ministries of youth and sport and some other structures, they are creating some recovery plans, but young people were not involved in the process, or only were involved young people who are in the organizations who really depend on financing from Ministry of Youth and Sport or partners which are suggested by Ministry of Youth and Sports. Therefore, like the recovery plan should be developed in as much as possible cross-sectoral consultations with youth-led organizations, and also EU structures who are responsible for concrete fields, for example, as DG EEC for education, culture, youth, sports and science, should have connections with reconstruction process in the field of youth, not DG NEAR, which has two general mandate and focuses on many things, but we should actually have this perspective of professionals who can like monitor, not only provide all the financial support or expert support, but also monitor what the actual reforms and work is going on internally in Ukraine. It's very important for further development and like how the civic society and Ukraine will recover like during wartime and after the wartime.
Thank you very much, Natalia, for your concrete proposals. And now, last but not least, Madam Patriona Graham, could you please shortly present your proposal?
We can't hear anything, I think.
Sorry, I think somebody in the back end was muting me. Can you hear me okay now?
We can hear you now, Patriona. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much, and sorry about that. So I will just be very brief because I see the time is moving on. So we have 5 key points in our proposal. This is in relation to resourcing, participation, education, culture, and city design. We recognise that there's no one-size-fits-all single solution to how young people can and should be involved in the reconstruction process. So we think these 5 elements are really important to embed in any response effort. So we need financial investment in young people's spaces. We need participation, so there's a need for youth panels in reconstruction planning, which should have both individual representatives, especially from minority groups, or representatives from youth councils and organisations. We need education, so we need education on peace dialogue and conflict resolution for young people, and a promotion of and investment in the same. In terms of culture, we need to make sure that we're promoting a young European identity, celebrating the candidacy of the new countries that have just been awarded candidacy status. Make sure no one is left behind as well, though. So as part of our cultural response, we can't typecast who needs support. We need to think of other groups as well, like people of colour and the Roma community, who we know have been marginalised in response efforts so far. And in city design, we need to bring young people into that conversation. So we need to have young people's safety in mind, young people's well-being and sustainability as well as key issues, which I'm sure young people would bring forward and be able to contribute to the reconstruction process. So resourcing, participation, education, culture and city design. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Graham, for your proposal, and thank you very much for respecting time. Now the voting is open now, and please use function on my box for your further questions. All presentations will be published on the event website. Also, I would like to emphasize the launch of the EESC Civil Society Prize 2022. And the 2022 prize will be reward effective, innovative and creative initiatives which aim to create a better future for European youth and with European youth by tackling the specific needs of young people and contributing to their empowerment and participation in all spheres of economic and social life. The deadline for submitting applications is 31st July 2022. More details are available on the EESC website and also in the chat. My colleagues will put the link so you can find more information about the Civil Society Prize. So while the voting is open, as I mentioned before, the most voted proposals will be taken further and we will put them under consideration. So I would like to thank you, our guest speakers, for accepting our invitation and for collaboration, to participants for joining and for your questions, to my colleagues and our trainee Massimiliano, who have worked very, very hard for a few months to make this webinar happen, and also Jasmine and Margarita for all the support. Wishing you a good day ahead and see you next time. Thank you very much.